Recently, Hasan has gotten in a little bit of like hot water again. Typical of him to do. He's always doing something insane, something ludicrous, something unimaginable, incredibly wacky stuff. And as Dan Can't Tweet would say, Dan Can't Stream would say, Hasan is always up to no good. And recently, he's been getting exposed for doxing a guy and threatening him. Hasan doxes a user while threatening them with a firearm. This happened on his last stream. No ban. I think I understand why in the last 24 hours some smaller Twitch streamers are starting to also publicly follow his actions now. Like, he says that. He says that. I think I understand why in the last 24 hours some smaller streamers would also start following in his footsteps. But the thing is, he's like not showing any examples or like pointing to any direct examples. People utilize this sort of like vague generalization to start, a huge narrative to get a bunch of attention off of drama like this. The reality is that they're definitely over speaking or over like shooting what exactly is going on. They're over representing what's actually going on here. So I want to see just what Hasan did to warrant this level of outrage. Let's take a look.
It's time to crusade Iran and Gaza. Mamdani communists. Let's go to war against the left.
In our sincerity and actually delivering for the very working people who've been left behind by our politics, compared with what President Trump has been able to do. Over the same period of time that I've been running, has been tell him the last person who couldn't get my name right, we defeated them, and that's what it's going to look like again.
Okay, fair enough. As you may
like, what I really want to know is what prompted him to like get the gun anyways. I mean, it's obviously a fake gun. It's obviously like a fake gun, but like what prompted him to like get up and get the gun anyways? Like, did somebody pick him off and then he made like some allusions to grabbing the gun? Did he grab it because there was a conversation about him buying an airsoft gun before that? I want to know the context to that. I want to know the details, which is why I'll probably take a look at his stream.
Oh, you found his account?
Today, I will show you 3 ways you can use your
Wait, this is the guy?
First thing we want to do is download the YouTube VPN app, which we can do through the first link in the description.
So there is some criticism that you can give here. Absolutely. This is the type of like rash behavior, the type of like, jumping the gun behavior, just to get my pun in there, that I would also criticize Ethan Klein for, where they go to like the immediate target and sometimes mess up the details and then just blast the wrong person.
I'd like to know who this guy is, man.
I know who he is.
Does he have an online persona?
No.
He's a music producer and
Really?
songwriter. Yeah,
God, I hope that man's life is ruined for this.
I hope so too.
Oh, someone says, why are you protecting the abuser's identity? I don't give give me his name.
Nick Lee.
Yeah, I don't give it. I want this guy's life ruined. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
Nick Lee. Oh, is this him?
Yeah, I would just be cautious.
That's not him.
You don't want to send a mob after the wrong person.
Oh, is he a bodybuilder?
He's a producer. And
He was a bodybuilder in the past.
This Chad ass, is he Asian?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I hope his life is over.
This guy, bro. I'm so glad we actually found his identity.
Are you guys 110% confident this is the right person?
I've heard that he.
Well, Ian's not.
I don't know about.
Ian's
the
not showing
bodybuilder.
this, and I think that's the right call. If we're not 100% sure that this is the right
I
person.
heard he's an Asian bodybuilder.
He definitely
leaks.
does music, and his socials have been found in that regard.
Well, hold on. You guys send me. Okay, you haven't shown anything in.
He has not switched
Okay,
to that.
you guys find out who the real guy is, and I'll show him. God damn.
I think we're jumping the gun. I mean, it's
What?
Yeah.
How are we jumping the gun? You said we have his identity. Olivia said we know who he is.
It's also his name on the marriage certificate.
It's a very common name, Nick
small chance
Lee.
that it's
That is not
Okay.
a unique name whatsoever. So I just want to be very sure that we're not sending a mob of people after the wrong Nick Lee. You know what I mean?
Well, we know his name is Nick Lee. We just don't know.
His name is Nick Lee, but again, that's like
It may not be the body.
one of the most common names you could pick from. People that are saying that and sharing that account, I'm actually timing you out. That is literally a dox account that you're sharing in our chat right now. So please stop spamming that. That is not his real Twitter account. That is meant to reveal their address and private information.
And I just can't wait to see his face, man.
This you can absolutely criticize. Hasan shouldn't be so trigger happy in getting his licks in and getting his owns in and then accidentally blast some guy that doesn't deserve it. He also should not be facilitating this level of, interaction, where if he obviously has its, like, eyes set on a target, his community, or himself, or his mods, or anybody adjacent to him, doesn't go out of their way to, what's the word? Doesn't go out of their way to actually, like, try to help him find out who it is that is slighting him. He shouldn't be facilitating this type of behavior. He shouldn't be emboldening this type of culture.
What are you gonna do, bro? Write a petition? Let's do a crusade, he says. Let's do a crusade, he says. Let's hang Hasan and Mamdani for treason, he says. What are you gonna do? Go on a fishing expedition? Try to fucking put malware in my phone? Is that what you're gonna do? You skinny bitch. Ugly
Unnecessary
ass.
language.
That's not him, it's this.
Hey, yo, dead.
But anyways, I would say that this could definitely be taken as an intimidation. You could definitely argue that way, especially how much he's flashing it around carelessly.
G, my bad, pimp. That's just what happened when you a real ass boss.
Does he even show his face in it? Oh no, it's even worse.
But like, again, this type of behavior is the most criticizable aspect of this entire thing. He shouldn't want to, like, none of this is doxing. All of these people are public. None of this is doxing. None of these people are public. However, that is still against Twitch, Twitch's TOS. They don't want people, like, obviously going after individuals, even if they do have public images, even if they do have public pages. But people are going to utilize, okay, there's where we have to separate the idea of dox as it's known and what's actually, like, described in the TOS. This, in and of itself, is not doxing in the inflammatory sense that a lot of people talk about. However, you can claim that what is being done here is definitely against the community guidelines. There's distinctions to be made. This on its own, if you have a presence on the internet, if you upload yourself to the internet, if you connect your private accounts, well, not private accounts because that's an oxymoron. If you connect your accounts and your usernames to a way that can lead back to you, specifically, for your YouTube, for you to become a public figure, then this isn't doxing. This, I wouldn't even consider this unethical. I just think it's a little bit iffy to do. But a lot of people will jump the gun on this and be like, oh, you just dox some guys publicly, you just dox some guys like private or, secluded YouTube account. You just dox their face. When the reality is that that's the risk that you take if you want to become like a YouTuber or a commentator or like a talking head of any point. Now, to be clear, there are more distinctions to be made on this because people will think that, oh, what if like, somebody goes out and finds like your Facebook or something like that. That's different. The reason why I'm making that distinction is because, say, for example, it is your goal to be like, a commentator or a YouTuber of sorts, and you keep utilizing the same, the same accounts that link together across multiple platforms. And that's different. You're opening yourself up to criticism and scrutinization. However, if your entire purpose as a creator is to have your identity separate from you as a commentator, then that's when I would draw the line. If your purpose is to remain as a anonymous commentator on YouTube or on the internet, yet people go out of their way to find your identity and then blast that to use against you, then that's when I would consider that there's like a legitimate moral wrong being done there.
Worse.
But this right here is not the end of the world. It is unironically not one of the worst things that Hasan has ever done, but people are going to try to like narrativize this in a way where it is one of the worst things that Hasan has ever done. Now, to be clear, given the fact that I'm going to upload this to my second channel, I know that I'm going to get commenters saying, oh, you're just riding Hasan's dig. You're just, trying to run defense for a terrorist supporter. To be clear, not that I'm trying to run defense for somebody that I dislike vehemently. No. What I'm doing is that I'm trying to at least give fair, objective criticism to a situation that is going to be spun out of proportion by channels that are going to call Hasan a murderous, terrorist-supporting douchebag. The reason why I bring all that up is because when you compare and contrast Hasan and Ethan Klein, they actually aren't that different from each other. It's just that more people are willing to claim Ethan Klein as our guy, given the fact that he has less, insane anti-American moments than Hasan.
Dude who is advocating to who's advocating to hang me for treason is mad at me. Okay, is mad at me.
Okay, here is where you could legitimately argue that this was made to be intimidating. this was made to actually be a form of threat or intimidation, which is against community guidelines, to be clear.
Doesn't realize that
Hold on. I need to take a look at that. Apex Crypto YT. Hang Hasan for treason. Well, actually, I'm in Singapore, buddy. Crusade. That was supposed to hurt. Get beat up enough in 2020 when we dragged y'all. So you could obviously argue that this individual instigated Hasan. Hasan shouldn't have done what he did, but it wasn't like one-sided. You can't say that this individual was like, okay. So in the past, let me again compare and contrast this with the Ethan Klein situation. Let me compare and contrast this with the Ethan Klein situation. In the past, I've argued that Ethan Klein is probably justified in going after somebody who has a public, Instagram page after the guy talked shit in a very anti-Semitic fashion. I would argue that he probably felt justified. Do I support or condone that behavior? Absolutely not. I find it disgusting. I find it very rash, very vindictive, not something that anybody with a platform should do, especially to thousands of people. But you could argue that he was like, that he had a level of justification. Do I necessarily align with that? No. But I understand the argument. I could definitely see the argument depending on where you're coming from and depending how good your argument was. In a situation like this, it's not much different. Somebody is literally saying, hang Hasan for treason. He's obviously instigating. And he's expecting for there not to be a level of response. Of course, he shouldn't have, employed this sort of, action to go find out who the guy is. He shouldn't have, at least, tried to intimidate. But this is not like a one-sided, oh, this guy is like a harmless fly on the wall that Hasan brutally, smashed because he was just angry. No, this is I want to say, a reciprocated response. Was it a little bit disproportionate, as people like to say? Perhaps, but it's not the most insane thing in the world. But people are going to utilize this as something to rally behind, as a huge red flag to be like, oh my god, this guy's evil. This guy needs to be absolutely banned from Twitch forever because he's a terrorist supporter that engages in murderous rhetoric. And that's not the case. Twitch staff was definitely watching this live as well. They saw Hasan break one of the most serious rules on Twitch and did nothing, then banned the chatter site-wide. Mikey stuff. Now, the thing about Dan is that Dan can be a little bit shifty. Sometimes he narrativizes things in very, very, very opportunistic or dishonest ways. So, to me, I'm very, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Apprehensive. Before I take anything that he says at face value. However, in this case, he's me reading the Twitch TOS for Tectone, for like Tectone's whole campaign previously. I do know the TOS pretty well, right? I do know the guidelines. This isn't inherently wrong. He did break quite a couple of these guidelines that in any other circumstance Twitch would probably moderate pretty heavily as well. Ban from Twitch support for driving bad is 7 days. How long do you get for waving around a firearm while doxing a user live? But again, that's not what occurred. He wasn't doxed. However, this is still against guidelines because the whole idea is not to incentivize harassment by going after somebody's public accounts, right? He didn't necessarily dox him the way people colloquially know, but he'll utilize this wording. He'll utilize this wording and framing to try to get after Hasan's neck. How long do you get for waving around a firearm while doxing a user live in front of 30k people? You now have personal knowledge of this, and you will have to explain what does or does not happen next. Now, to be clear, to make my opinion very well known, I think Twitch does a very poor job at moderating their platform, and definitely does have their biases, their hypocrisies, and their favorites. So, in a situation like this, I would either say that nobody should be banned at all, or if you want to have a level of consistency, I would definitely say that Hasan deserves at least a 7-day ban for this. At the very least, if you want to play favorites. But ideally, you should ban Hasan for 2 weeks to a month for a situation like this, if it's really that egregious and against Twitch's community guidelines. Hello, Nick Andros. Thank you for tuning in, buddy. People say it's an airsoft gun. I have no idea if it is or not. It's more than likely an airsoft gun. Hasan does own an airsoft gun, but that would also be the perfect cover he needs to also own a regular G19, which he won't confirm or deny. So like now he's like shifting the narrative to essentially like say that Hasan is preemptively plotting to give himself plausible deniability in case he ever intimidated or utilized a firearm to threaten violence against somebody. Intent is all that matters. He's threatening and doxing a viewer with a weapon. Yeah, I would have to argue. This is fair. I think this is fair. The intent is what matters in a situation like this. But to preemptively frame it in this way, again, levels of dishonesty that I can't get behind.
Groups.
I just like calling things as they are.
This is my favorite type of chatter who just keeps spamming. Do you own guns? Do you own guns? Do you own guns? Do you own guns? If you are to own guns, do you hold them in a safe? Specifically, can I get the blueprint to your house or where you have guns if you have guns? Like, what gun owner that's responsible, if they had a gun or not, would fucking tell you? What responsible person
That's true.
is going to inform 36,000 people on?
And as a matter of fact, this type of behavior leads me to believe that if Hasan really cares about being a responsible gun owner, he probably wouldn't be waving around a live firearm to emphasize an intimidation or threats. So it is more than likely, based on this behavior, that was an airsoft gun, which, in my opinion, does somewhat lessen the severity about his intents. Regardless, the intent is still there, that he was probably attempting to intimidate somebody.
Whether or not they have a
which is grounds for a ban, in my opinion. It is definitely grounds for a ban. Bazanase, I heard you were ignoring email reports, so I wanted to let you know the following was submitted for both Hasanabi and Central_Committee. Good luck finding a reason to ignore them. It has now been repeated on every available system. So, thank you for submitting your report. So yeah, they're trying to get Hasan banned, and I think it's rightfully so. But there's very specific framing and flavoring being added to all of this. Some people are taking it to very high extremes that I disagree with. For the most part, I think we should treat it as this is. Hasan had a very irrational moment on stream. Not something that he should really be able to get away with, and he should be rightfully banned without people treating this in a very dishonest fashion and making it more egregious than what it actually is.